Hello and welcome to Ideas with Diana. It's been a while since I've done an Ideas with Diana. Part of the reason is because basically I just was a little bit tired and I needed to take a little bit of a rest. But the thing is, what happens though, this Ideas with Diana is more about sort of like what I would consider a time a time capsule. So if I was to be able to send a video time letter to myself when I was in my mid 20s to late 20s, what would I tell myself? Well, first thing I tell myself, just remember every encounter you went through, every decision you made worked out positively. At the time it wasn't perfect, you had some consequences, you had some rough patches, but in the long run, it worked out perfectly, and you survived, and you actually thrived. The second part, the most important thing about what you're going through, um, there's an important seminar that you'll find when you're about in your late 20s that you go to that's headed by Wisconsin Lutheran College, and it's a seminar that's held on the southeast side of Milwaukee. You're going to take Highway 32 home that day, but the thing is, what happens though? Some of the people you go with from your lab section are going to look at you as the next day as a weirdo. They're going to say, "God, you thought that seminar was something? You really did something." What about that one person who was in the weird jumpsuit, weird black and white jumpsuit, looked like a bozo suit to some people that were raised in Chicagoland or Detroit that thought that the one person, an educational psychologist, was basically dressed like a bozo. And also they said, well, what about this professor talking about economics? We have TIA craft. We don't have to worry about this stuff. Well, actually, what happens. Those two people are the two most important people you meet, and at the time you'll realize that you said, well, if you did want to go Parkside, another private college that you would have chosen was Wisconsin Lutheran College at that time because of those two professors. The reason why is because the economics professor gave us a simple thing. Let's say your savings, and you're saving your money, and you have one option that gives you 10% interest per year, another option that gives you 7% interest per year. Which one's a better option? Well, in the group buyers, and everyone raised their hand and said the 10% one's the better option. And I saw him raised my hand. He says, well, why is it? Why did you pick the 7%? I said, well, what's the load? What's the federal taxation? What's the state taxation? Everyone looked at me, huh? You're a tech guy. How do you know about this? I come from a business family. And also, my family taught me economics while on the side, reading Harvard Business Review at that time and some other business magazines, Forbes and others. And the professor said, well, could you explain to the rest of your group what that means? Well, I said, well, right now in the 80s, capital gains rate was about 35%. State income tax in Wisconsin was 15%. Federal income tax was about 30% based on what we were being paid. So I said, no, you're going to end up paying at least 35 to 50% off that. Plus, if there's a 5% load, that's 55%. So you take 55% off 10%. That means you get 5.5% versus a non-load, tax-free at 7%. So you make 1.5% more, or basically 25% more, which adds up quite a bit in the long run. And then he went on to say, well, he said, why is it important not to just rely on TIA craft or basically an IRA account? Why is it important to have your own savings account? Because today, like when I watch the videos from people working in the tech field, the first thing many of them say that they wish they would have learned as a software engineer is basically to make sure you save aside part of your money, so in case you go through bouts of life, you don't have to worry about paying rent right away, paying bills right away. In essence, it's like when people worked at the motors. You kept a strike fund. You saved money for a strike fund in case there was a strike. You could go on strike. You could afford to go on strike. Or strike for medical benefits, strike for better pay, and other stuff. The second part, which I liked, was simply with the educational psychologist, what happened? He came in the room. We're expecting to hear. Everyone's expecting to hear like a standard lecture, like from you sit at desk and what happened? She had all these balls, these toys, and everything else. Well, let me show you like that. But whoops. Let's go this way. Some people may wonder why I have my Barbie collection and also why I have my car collection. And even today, when I went shopping, let's go over here at Pick and Save. I picked up a Hot Wheel collection of basically a Corvette, a souped up sports car, and a Camaro. Now, why did I do this? Because basically, part of the second part of this seminar that I went to was about basically the importance of play. In the tech field, what happens? So everyone is supposed to be coding all the time. You're supposed to be coding, answering phone calls, answering alarms, doing dependencies, doing this, doing that. Well, what happens? You got to have play, because even like when I saw this one person that showed where they worked at Google in New York, Google has a playroom. And in a way, it's like Parkside's old playroom. I saw a video game machine in there. They had isolation booths where you could sit down and just get isolated in your thoughts. They had like a coffee snack table. They had like someone doing a dance thing or something like that on the dance machines. Play is important. At Parkside, we used to have that all the time. Nowadays at Parkside, they don't have that at UW Parkside. They have something called Den. It's like there's no video games, there's no bowling alley, there's no place to play. And the club rooms are now administrative rooms, like on the second floor where the cafeteria is. That used to be where we used to meet for the Doctor Who Club. Because you got to have play. Because the reason why I tell my younger self that don't ever give up the aspect of play, because everyone wants you to become a robot. They want you to say, well, because they can make a lot of money off you as a robot. Well, we'll promise to pay you. You can make it up when you're older. You give up the play and you can make it. But it's like my parents told me when we used to watch reruns of Guy Lombardo. It says, there's a song like you can make the dough and have it when you're older. And the song was about, rather than making the dough, enjoying part of the playtime, rather and not foregoing making so much dough. It's a song by Guy Lombardo on one of the TV programs we used to watch on PBS when my parents were alive, and that was very good advice. And so those two seminars are very important, because to my younger self, what I'd say is those help give you confidence as to what you go through is when your research group turned against you, because you have to realize that basically, even though these people think they have masters and PhDs and MD PhDs in medical science, they don't have the human values. They don't have the emotional intelligence. You have the emotional intelligence. That's why you're a manager, and that's why you were hired to save the jobs for those 65 people. But the thing is, what happened was your skills are more in management and administration, not being a med tech or something else. So use that. And the other thing what I'd say is basically some of the movies you'd watch. When you went out to movies in Kenosha with friends, sometimes you had a choice between going to one movie or another movie. Like one night you'd choose whether to watch Firefox or go watch Streets of Fire. You made a decision to watch Streets of Fire rather than Firefox, and talk with a friend of yours Monday about what Firefox was like. But Streets of Fire, it becomes a very mythical and very recharging fable, because even though you may not think it of the time, a lot of people do think of you as Michael Pear, who is the hero in the movie, because even when you transition, people still come to you basically the same way they came to Michael Pear. There's a big problem. There's a big bully that needs to be taken care of. You're the one that takes care of the bully, but also, you're not perfect, but you do your best to do it, and even in transition. So basically, like with me, basically I worked as a military contractor, so there's sometimes when I present myself, people will say, "Well, God, you still present yourself as a military contractor, Air Force and Navy, and also what happens physical fitness. I was trained actually Army, Marine Corps, Navy, and Air Force physical fitness, Marine Corps judo, um, Army physical fitness and aerobics like that. Because one time we did a military cool down, and at the end, the only people who could do this, the core push-ups, were the instructor who was a colonel in the Army Medical Corps for the National Guard in Wisconsin, and myself. Now I looked and said, "God, you're a tech guy. How can you do this?" And that's the the thing about what happens though is the things that you think people are trying to tell you to do. You do the best thing. You did always do. You always did the best thing by walking. Remember, walk away, walk away. Um, the other point is don't ever put too much faith in your peers, because if you're in a bad peer group, they can steer you down the wrong way or try to destroy you, and that will have that will have. To my younger self, I'd say I wouldn't tell them how it happened, but I'd say basically, be prepared. It will happen, because one year you're going to be the toast of the town. Everyone's going to say, "Oh, God, you're so great in the lab. We like to hear that you're here. Oh, you're just wonderful." But by the time the last year comes, it's like, well, well, at the dinner dance, we don't want you to sit at our table. And a friend of yours that comes, and she's going to be crying. And so luckily, the adults in the room, some of the older people, more mature, invite you to sit at their table. And but what happens? Both of you still end up going home early because you're so upset that your peer team turned on you. But the thing is, what you learn afterwards is at the next meeting, when there's a meeting, when they come and invite you back to sit at the table for the special meeting, you both you have the courage to say no. You guys rejected us at the dinner dance. We're going to sit at this other table with the people who invited us to sit. And they're going to say, "Well, you're sitting with the suits. You became the suit." Well, the suits didn't abandon us. You guys did. You guys threw us under the bus. So, who's actually has better integrity in that? And that was the case. One person, Ron, when I worked at the Blood Center, he was CEO, and he took me under his wing and was training me to be a medical executive. And that's what helped me make my decision to go into business many years later with a business degree. Unfortunately, what happened, because he was under so much stress, he died at age 40. And so when he died, there's a big mess, because he was doing 4 jobs, and the people they hired to do the 4 jobs, oh God, I'm glad I can look back at it and not and just sort of chuckle. But that's why to my younger self I said, stay fast. You, like Lego would say, stay the course, stay the course, stay the course. You made the right decision. Sometimes the consequences were a little bit rough, for a short period of time, but what happens? You'll go from them, you'll live from them, and you'll move forward from them. Another point I'd like to mention is um, the savings part. It is very important to make sure you have a savings part, even though you're starting a career and you're getting this big pay, or even if for some in the military, even though you may be E5, E6, E7, you're getting this big pay now when you're in your early 20s. Um, put a lot of it away. Don't try. You don't try to hold off on those expensive cars. Try to hold off on the trappings that they say. It's better to have the cash, because like many people in the tech field nowadays realize you got to have that buffer zone, because basically if you don't have that buffer zone, as soon as you get laid off or something, someone points to say, "Aha, got you. Now you got to look for a job. Now how are you going to pay rent? You got to take this sole offer to make sure you can pay rent and stay where you are, pay your mortgage. You got to make." And what happens, when I left the research park, they thought they had me trapped that way too. Luckily, at that time, my dad and uncle did a lot of the financial planning for me before I could get up to speed. And basically, I was able to avoid that. And part of the way I avoided it is basically I had to make one hard decision. When I did leave the research park, um, when I did buy a car, I had to make sure that I bought a car that I can afford. not something that someone said, well, you should get this type of car. I was still able to buy a second Lincoln. I was able to buy a Cutlass, and also I was able to buy a Buick. But the thing is, it was a way that basically I didn't have a big car payment. It's actually that it was actually paid off early and also paid without an installment payment. And that's because basically I used the buffer that I had in my savings to pay for it in cash. So I didn't have a car payment, so I didn't have to worry about that. So that's where savings comes in, and also that's where it comes to living a modest lifestyle, like today. I like to get a car. Um, basically I could, but the problems I have is with my eyesight. Last year I was diagnosed with cataracts, so basically, when I do drive, it's like basically I see stuff, and it's like basically I have to be concerned about um, what I'm going to do, because what happens um, with the calyx and the ear duct thing, sometimes I start to have a little bit trouble. Things start to blur later in the evening, so that's why I still if I do go back to driving again, I drive during the daytime, but stay off the highways. But also, I use public transportation or Uber, because basically it's better for me to do it that way. In addition to having neuropathy in my right leg, it's still better, because even when I drove a friend back from the hospital one time, we were in heavy traffic and my neuropathy acted up, and luckily I could drive through the pain, but basically I wouldn't want to do that again. So to my younger self, what I would say is basically, when you get older, some of the things you go to, you may have health issues, but like my dad always told me, my dad had polio, but he never used that as an excuse. Never use your health as an excuse. You find ways to do things. You find ways to get through it. Because even when my dad had polio, when kids would bully me when I was younger, what happens? My dad would come out of the house. He'd walk on the street, and my dad had polio. He couldn't run, but when he walked, these gang kids would start to run all the way down, and he said, "You're running from someone who has polio. They can't even catch you." But my dad had a very strong walk and a very strong presence, like Michael Parrott did on Streets of Fire. And what happened was, even when the parents came, they said, "No, no, no, no. We promise we'll stay out of your neighborhood. We'll stay out of your neighborhood." And even when the police came, the police said, "No, we support Mr. Konecki. He's right away. That basically you guys were trying to cause trouble, so we're going to put a special watch on you." But that's why you never give in to whenever someone tries to poke up into your weakness, because at the time when I was at to my younger self, what I'd say, when you worked at the research park, people are going to criticize your music. They're going to say, well, you don't listen to Laser 103, you listen to KTI, you listen to Wilson Phillips too much, you listen to Belinda Carlisle too much, you don't really listen to real rock music or something, or their music. Well, you don't dress like us. Well, you don't wear blue jeans. Well, at that time, I actually wore blue jeans, but I wore white Levi's button fly jeans, and they always, and contrary to many people's opinion, they always were clean and pressed, compared with some of the people who basically, except for two friends of mine, theirs were always clean and pressed. But the thing is, others like that, they tried to make off that they were being cool when they really had themselves overextended. And even but even when I wore my white Levi's, I remember one time working downtown. A friend of mine was listening on a local radio station, because I used to get off at the Greyhound station on 7th Street and walk to 17th. And one time, one of the women DJs saw me once. Says, God, who's that hot guy wearing the white Levi's walking up Wisconsin Avenue? A friend of mine heard this, and she said, you just made the radio by reference. And I smiled at, like, at that. Is a very happy moment like that. So to my younger self, be yourself. Be yourself. Don't let other people try to force you to be what you have to be. It's going to be very hard, because sometimes they'll say, well, you're not going to have any friends. It's lonely at the top. Well, what happens is, it's not lonely at the top. It's not. But what happens if you give in to those people, it will be lonely, because basically they'll try to make it that to destroy your reputation. Your reputation is not based upon how many people you please. It's basically how many people trust you and call you when they need help. That's what reputation is how many people trust you and call. Because I have friends that call me, and whenever they call me, I do my best to help them. And sometimes it's at 9 o'clock in the morning, other times it's at 2 o'clock in the morning. But the thing is, what I've learned basically, I'm in my um, early 60s now, and you can see I don't have a lot of my hair. That's from when I worked. But even basically because of jobs I did have some hair loss. And my uncle would say, "Well, why don't you wear a toupee?" And I always didn't want to wear a toupee then because I thought, well, I didn't like how that the things that went with that like that also. But that's why sometimes I wear wigs. But you can see my hair is going quite a bit. Um, the whole thing is what I would say to my younger self is you made the right decisions. Keep firm. Remember Reagan stated course. Remember Streets of Fire as a fable and as a myth to recharge yourself. Remember the Michael Pear character. Remember do exactly what he did. Yeah, his because that's what's going to help you survive a lot of the ups and downs in life. And that though. And finally, when you do run into religious moments, remember the power of myth with Joseph Campbell, the PBS series, um, not the book, but the PBS series. And that though, when you watch it with your parents, because that's also important to guide you in your faith. So, to my younger self, just remember you're going to survive. It's going to be a little bit of a bumpy road, but the way you do survive is by saving money and not spending everything you make. It's not how much you make; it's how much you save. And to my younger friends today, what I tell you, you're getting paid a lot of money, more than what many of us made at this time. Some of you may be making 50,000, 100,000. Um, Try to save 20% of it. Find some way to save it, but save it. But when you do save it, don't put it all in the stock market. Don't put it all in the IRA. Make sure you keep at least 20% of your gross income in your portfolio as cash. Make sure you keep it as cash that's readily available so that you can pull from it. Because sometimes when you're in a crisis, it's hard to pull money out of an IRA, hard to pull money out of a CD. Make sure you keep enough in cash. And also, if you do keep in cash, make sure that you fill out the right paperwork, that you pay federal tax on that cash, so someone can't try to blackmail you and say, well, you're hiding cash under the bed that you didn't declare. Make sure you fill out the right paperwork. So, and if you don't know how to do it, there's many people who can help. H&R Block Executive Tax Service, who we used for many years, Jackson Hewitt. But it has to be an executive tax service because you need to have someone that knows more than how to fill out a simple tax return. It has to be an executive tax service. You're going to pay for a little bit more for it, but it's worth it. So that's would be a time travel letter to my younger self. And in a closing thought, I would just say basically, um, the way I'm living now, I'm happy that I'm living now because even today, like when I went to the bus stop. When I was waiting for a bus, I sat on the grass. I was thinking, oh, isn't this nice? I don't have any coding projects to worry about. I don't have any alarms. I don't have any Commander McHale moments where someone broke the research machines or something else like that, though. And I could just sit down and enjoy the sun, so I get a little bit of a tan. And that's what your retirement should be about. It's not everything you see on TV, everything you see in streaming. Try to like this one person who makes these YouTube videos that I put in my episode companion. Try to be careful of the daily life videos because those some of those are basically like presentations to make you think that that's what every day is like. That's not what every day is like. Though you got to realize to separate the wheat from the chaff. And that's why if you do move to an area, before you move to an area, live there for about 14 days as a resident. Don't live as a tourist, live as a resident. See what's right to go to a local store, see what's right to shop every day. Get up in the morning to see if you really like the area. That's how that and learn how to bounce back. Learn the most important thing with my younger self. I said the best thing you developed were two things: learning to walk away, and also learning when to break the chain of command and go over someone's head. Those decisions have always been right. Don't believe people say you always have to follow the chain of command. You have a right to break the chain of command, go over someone's head, and you have the right to walk away. Well, let me know what you think. The best way to reach me is commenting on YouTube, Facebook, Pinterest, TikTok, and Twitter, and I'll add some of those links to you. Please be patient because sometimes it takes me a while to respond. And this has been a special ideas with Diana, a special time traveling letter to my younger self.